inside Uhuru's last budget, and of course, you've already highlighted that. And on the standard, you've got some good details on what that is. But I'd like to, first of all, just give a scope, or rather give Abby the opportunity to give us a scope and the history of the budget and some of the figures that we are looking at. Nowadays, we talk in trillions in this country and what that means. Abby, maybe just to paint a picture of where we are coming from in terms of the history of the budget. This year, it is different, not just because of the amount, but the fact that it's also in March as opposed to June. Maybe you can tell us the effect that has on the financial year and really what we should be looking forward to before we banter on that.
Well, many thanks, Mike. It's going to be an interesting budget this year for the fact that, first of all, it's being done in the month of March. Ideally, it used to be done in June. And, of course, this captures the budget financial year that the government has, where the money is released in July to cover till the next year, that being June. So it's not really a big concern that we are doing the budget in March. It's just because of the elections, but next year we'll go back to the June calendar cycle. So really this is just to try and avoid a lacuna in terms of money being released and the budget policy statement being tabled before Parliament. So that's really the gist of it. But to the question around the history of the budget, well, if I'm to look back, say 5 years from now, our budget has grown nearly 4 times. Kenya used to have a budget of 960 billion. That is the time when we had President Mwai Kibaki, retired president actually. So if you look at the trends, it shows us a government that has been having an insatiable appetite to spend. This technically means that if you're looking at the government as an organization, it really connects to an organization that wants to grow. So they need more money to do more things. That's just the simplistic way to look at it. But needing more money means either you tax the population more or you borrow heavily outside. So we've also seen a growing trend in the debt that the country is taking up. Right now, our debt is standing at 3.2 trillion shillings since President Kenyatta took over. But there's good debt and bad debt. So the bigger question has been, have we been using our debt in the right manner that can can actually cause a trickle-down effect to the common man, where people can get jobs, companies come to set up. That's one of the biggest challenges that we've had. We've not been quite able to ensure that we have people manufacturing to grow. Right now, unemployment is still a big issue. But the bigger concern right now is, how do we fund our budget? Now, our budget is 2.62 trillion shillings, Mike. And of course, the taxman can only collect to a certain level. That is about 900 billion. So by the fact that we've seen the budget hit 2.6, the taxman has to collect an additional 300 billion shillings to make it at about 1.1 trillion, which means you and me and the rest of us here either will get to be taxed more on our current taxes, or they'll have to borrow heavily, Mike. So that's just a snapshot of some of the key highlights around the budget. Of course, there's a lot of anticipation that this year new taxes won't be introduced because it's an election year. The government is trying to play a very delicate balancing act, Mike.
All right. Maybe let me come to you, Eric. And you've had Abby highlight, the amount of monies that we're talking about and the differences between the different budgets. I don't know what you do for a profession, but over the years, what has been the effect of this soaring debt that Kenya has in terms of your shopping basket? When you go into a supermarket and you buy, what has been your experience?
I think what I would say is, just take a simple example, Mike. When you go to the supermarket and you have 1,000 shillings, a few years ago, I mean, your biceps would show that you have actually purchased something. These days, just load your phone with credit and attempt to buy 2 kilograms of sugar or flour, and that's it. Your 1,000 shillings doesn't give you as much mileage as it used to before. So that is probably what I would say one of my concerns, because, it means it hits at your pocket. And, the salary versus the inflation race is normally quite impaired. So my concern is, what is the government going to do about this? I'm hoping the budget will have, an accommodation for that. And an interesting thing I've had is that the government has two options to meet the deficit. Either me and fellow Kenyans are taxed, or we go for debt. Will the Kenyans accept? Or will we pick our empty sufurias and come and make noise at parliament? And if we are borrowing the debt, what's the long-term effect in terms of after the leadership or after future generations? These are things that I'm now beginning to think of now that I'm hearing we're talking about trillions. That's a ridiculous sum amount of money. It's like we're spending 3/4 above our salary, if I can speak on behalf of the government, which is also a concern. I'm definitely sure I'd want to hear what's happening and what will be taxed, Yeah.
All right. Now, Abi, I'll come to you on that question. What is the long-term effect? And maybe just to paint a picture of how much 1 trillion shillings is. I think somebody had once said you can lay, is it 1,000 notes from here to Mombasa, I think, one after the other, just to show you how much a trillion is. That is a lot of money. But I'll come to that in just a bit in terms of what is the long-term effect. But I know, Evelyn, you're in business, and the government has consistently told us, look, some of these investments we're making now may not be felt immediately. For instance, we can talk about the SGR. We can talk about the roads opening up, the business sector. But maybe, is that, do you think, a valid argument for the amount of money we're borrowing so that the effect will probably be felt later on?
I think yes. For such kind of heavy infrastructure developments, the effect will be met long term. For me, it's will I see it making sense for my business so that I can actually wait and say, okay, so the government is doing this for me. As a business person, I will see the results in maybe 5-10 years. So the question is, as Abby said, we have so much debt. Is it good debt? Is it bad debt? And if it is good debt, what is the repayment term? Because I want to see if the SGR is going to help me and I have, a piece of land somewhere in Lolongo. I can stop staying in Nairobi, and I know if I go build my house in Lolongo, I can access the CBD in record time. So it is helping me manage my life at a long term. I'm managing my time on a more long term. So I can actually encourage those kind of investments. So I would actually want to know the money that they're borrowing, we are actually sinking in debt. And my worst fear is my children will actually be paying this debt as young as they are. So is it good debt or is it bad debt? Yeah.
And I won't ask how old you are, but you probably would benefit from two areas that the government had given out money: women and youth. And you're in business. Again, I say I won't ask, but I'm just basing on what I see. But anyway, have you managed to tap into that? Because maybe that would also help spur your business.
Yes. I have been able to tap into the women, the 30% of allocation to the women. It's good because that space has enabled me to access international markets, yes, for my business. And so what is there is that the money that women are being given, I'm able to access it through certain networks, which is a good thing because I don't now need to be with the 70%, because with the kind of business I am in, it is very male-infiltrated. So the 30% actually really works for me. Again, then I am in the bracket of youth, so I have
advantage.
Yes.
All right, and in case you're joining us now, we are actually bringing you word on the street of the budget. And in case you need to buy a newspaper, I'll encourage you to come and buy from this stand right between Banda Street and Koinange Street, where Phyllis has been very kind with her space. She has allowed us to use this space basically to continue with the show. Abby, a pertinent question asked by Eric, and that is the long-term effect of the amount of money that we have borrowed.
So, Mike, looking at the debt issue, right now, to do the math, every kid being born is going to pay 90,000 shillings. So, really, if you look at the bigger issue right now is the debt we are taking on, it has concessional periods spanning to 30 years, some 20 years, and it is foreign denominated. What do I mean by this? We've borrowed debt that is in another currency. And if you borrow debt in another currency, if there are any changes in terms of the exchange rate, definitely we'll be paying more. If, say, the dollar strengthens against the shilling, we'll be paying more. That's the long-term effect. The other issue is if we default on our debt, it has serious consequences. We might get our credit rating as a country downgraded, and this makes us an unattractive country to borrow or investors to give us money. So that's one of the bigger issues, Mike. And the other thing with this year's budget is just look at our wage bill. We are spending 627 billion shillings to pay people in Parliament, Senate, MCAs, and I mean, this is a representation of 2% of the population, but they are gobbling up nearly a third of our budget against a bigger population where if we are able to clamp down on our wage bill and maybe say cut it by a half, this would mean a big relief in terms of tax collection, because if that money can be channeled to other projects, it will be able to help the government achieve more if we're able to reduce our wage bill, Mike.
All right. Another thing maybe you could help us understand, Abby, is when we talk about this debt that the country has taken and the fact that our children, Evelyn alluded to that, our children are going to be paying that debt. Break it down for me to fully understand, how am I paying that debt? Because when I wake up every morning, go to work, I get my pay slip, I don't see anywhere written debt, being paid. So how is it when we talk about this debt being paid by our children over the long term? How does that work?
So to just break it down further, Mike, right now you pay taxes. You pay different types of taxes. That is income tax. You also pay value-added tax, which the government collects as revenue. And the revenue they collect, they now refinance that debt that they had taken. So you won't see it anywhere in your pay slip, or you won't get a call from KRA being told you need to chip in on this and that. Oh, yeah. So really, there isn't any connection to that per se. But if the government is meeting this debt, they will have to ensure that as you and me and the rest of us continue with our day-to-day activities, they, on their part, are able to meet the debt in terms of paying it without any, failure. So there isn't any specific item you'll see on your payslip, but just look at the tax you pay. That gives you a better picture of the debt situation in the country, Mike.
All right, let's now move to expectations and possibly Eric, as Mwananchi, going about your business, your everyday dealings. We've seen this budget read over and over again, and it becomes a big thing. I remember from back in the day when you'd have the minister holding that briefcase, which was carrying the very important documents that he was going to read. But do you really, from the Mwananchi perspective, fully understand what it is that he reads in that budget? We know it is important because, we highlight it and all that. But does it really percolate down to the Mwananchi to feel that this is exactly what it means to me?
Mike, first of all, I'm very glad you asked me this question after Abby has educated me, so I can give an informed, answer. I will honestly tell you that, just like you said, from back in the day, our main concern has been let the government not touch unga, let the government not touch sugar, let the government not touch the things that, or rather the ingredients that make up the meals that we eat. Let it not affect the fuel because we need to get to work, and we also need to be able to have more salary than more month, basically. So I will say Abby today has done a good job of educating a common man like me when it comes to the nitty-gritties of the budget. I now understand these things. But before, all I wanted to hear was, and we are not going to tax flour, and I'm just there saying hallelujah, amen, and fuel has gone down by 2 shillings. Good, so bus fare goes down. I know now I can negotiate with my salary. But beginning to understand that, my goodness, 90,000, I don't have a child right now. Meaning, the minute I decide to, they already come in with a loan they need to pay of 90,000 shillings. It's just opened up my mind to, it's about time we actually, paid attention to what he said. And I don't know if it's possible. We need to take the government to task about this thing. Is the borrowing warranted? And if we're asking the government if the borrowing is warranted, then are we willing as Kenyans to accept taxation on our end?